Part 1. The bank stood like a monument to power in the center of the city, tall glass walls, steel columns, and polished marble steps that reflected the afternoon sun. Inside, everything was designed to impress. Crystal chandeliers shimmered overhead, scattering soft golden light across the vast lobby. The floors were so perfectly polished that they mirrored the movement of expensive shoes gliding confidently across them. People who entered this building usually did so with purpose: investors, business owners, politicians. They wore tailored suits and subtle perfumes that spoke of wealth without shouting it. Conversations were quiet, calculated, and always about numbers large enough to make ordinary people dizzy. At exactly 2:17 p.m., the massive glass doors slid open again. And in stepped someone who did not belong. He was thin, maybe 14 years old. His sneakers were faded, the rubber peeling at the edges. His jeans were slightly too short, as if he had grown too fast for them. The sleeves of his jacket were frayed, and the zipper didn't quite close properly. A small backpack hung loosely over one shoulder. For a moment, he simply stood there. The cool air conditioning brushed against his face. His dark eyes scanned the lobby, the marble, the counters, the employees moving with smooth efficiency. People noticed him immediately. A woman seated on a leather sofa paused mid-sip of her cappuccino. An older man in a gray suit glanced over his glasses. Two clerks behind the reception desk exchanged a look that needed no words. The boy took a breath and walked forward. Each step echoed slightly in the vast room. The security guard near the entrance straightened subtly, watching him. The boy didn't look dangerous, just out of place. He approached the main reception desk. The receptionist, a perfectly groomed woman in her 30s, gave him a tight, professional smile, the kind reserved for inconvenience. "Yes," she asked. "I want to withdraw all my money," the boy said. There was no hesitation in his voice. The receptionist blinked. "I'm sorry, all of it," he repeated. "And I want to close my account." The words hung in the air for a second. Then one of the clerks beside her let out a quiet snort. The receptionist's smile grew thinner. "Do you have an appointment with your guardian?" "I don't need one," the boy replied calmly. "It's my account." A nearby manager overheard the exchange. He adjusted his expensive cufflinks and approached, his polished shoes clicking against the marble. "Is there a problem?" he asked lightly. The receptionist gave a subtle nod toward the boy. "He wants to withdraw all his money." The manager looked down at the boy, amusement flickering across his face. "Do you even know how banks work?" he asked, folding his arms casually. The boy met his eyes. His gaze was steady, almost unsettlingly so. "Yes," he said, "I want to withdraw everything and close the account." A soft ripple of laughter spread among the employees behind the desk. "And how much do you believe is in this account?" the manager asked, tilting his head slightly. The boy slipped a slightly worn bank card from his pocket and placed it carefully on the desk. "That's not important," he said. "It's mine." The manager picked up the card, turning it between his fingers as if examining a toy. "Let's take a look at your fortune," he said with theatrical politeness. The clerks leaned closer to the computer screen, eager for entertainment. The card was inserted. The system began to load. The manager rested one hand on the counter, smiling. "You know, young man, most people your age save birthday money. It's good to build habits early." The boy said nothing. The loading icon spun longer than expected. The clerk frowned. "That's strange." "What is?" the manager asked, still smiling. "It's not displaying properly." "Try again," he said, clearly bored. She refreshed the page. This time, numbers appeared. But they didn't stop appearing. The clerk's fingers froze above the keyboard. The color drained from her face. "Sir," the manager's smile faltered. "What now?" She slowly rotated the monitor toward him. He glanced down casually, then leaned closer. His eyes widened. The number on the screen was long. Very long. Too long. It wasn't a few hundred. It wasn't a few thousand. It wasn't even a few million. The digits extended beyond the visible line. She had to scroll. The manager felt his throat tighten. "That's not possible," he muttered. The clerk whispered, "It's verified. The system confirms it." He straightened abruptly. There must be an error in the database. Another clerk quickly cross-checked the internal registry. "No error," she said softly. The manager looked back at the boy. The boy was watching them quietly, hands resting in his jacket pockets. There was no arrogance in his expression. No excitement, just calm. "Well?" the boy asked. The entire lobby had grown unusually quiet. Even the clients nearby sensed something had shifted. The manager cleared his throat. This account, it's under your legal name. Yes. That's impossible. Why? The boy asked again, his tone steady. The manager hesitated, because he couldn't say it out loud. Because you look poor. Because children in worn sneakers don't hold this kind of balance. Because power is supposed to look polished. You're very young, he finally said. And, the boy replied. A bead of sweat formed at the manager's temple. The clerk quietly printed the account summary. When the paper slid out, the manager grabbed it quickly, as if afraid someone else might see. But several employees had already seen enough. The boy reached into his backpack and pulled out a neatly folded document. He placed it on the counter. You might want to check this too, he said. The manager unfolded it. His hands began to tremble. It was not just an account statement. It was ownership verification. The bank account was tied to a trust. A controlling trust. One that held over 51% of the shares of the bank's parent holding company. The manager's breathing became shallow. The boy wasn't just a wealthy client. He was the majority shareholder. Technically, the owner. The realization hit like cold water. The same employees who had chuckled minutes earlier now stood frozen. The security guard looked confused. A whisper passed through the lobby. The manager looked up slowly. The boy was still standing there in worn sneakers. But now the room felt different. The air heavier. I believe, the boy said softly, that means I have the right to withdraw my funds. The manager's voice cracked slightly. This requires higher authorization. Call them, the boy replied calmly. The manager nodded stiffly and stepped away, dialing a number with shaky fingers. The receptionist stared at the boy as if seeing him for the first time. Clients nearby pretended not to look, but their eyes kept drifting toward the scene. The boy shifted his weight slightly, glancing around the marble lobby again. He didn't look impressed. He didn't look proud. He looked patient. As if he had expected this reaction all along. Within minutes, whispers spread upstairs. Phones rang, elevators moved, and the atmosphere of effortless superiority that once filled the bank began to fracture. All because a boy in worn sneakers had walked in and said, I want to withdraw all my money. And no one had known who he truly was. Part 2. The silence inside the conference room felt heavier than the marble walls surrounding it. The regional director stood near the long glass table, her posture straight but her fingers tightly interlocked. The manager who had laughed earlier avoided looking at the boy entirely. Two legal advisors had joined them, flipping through printed documents with tense precision. And at the center of the room, seated in a leather chair clearly too large for him, was the boy. His worn sneakers barely touched the polished floor. But no one in that room doubted who held the power. The director cleared her throat carefully. We have confirmed the documentation. The controlling shares are indeed held in trust under your name. The boy nodded once. And the trust becomes fully operational at 14. One of the lawyers asked cautiously. Yes, the boy replied. My father designed it that way. The word father lingered in the air. The director studied him more closely now. Not as a child, but as a figure to be understood. Your father, she said carefully, was not publicly associated with the bank's daily operations. He preferred it that way, the boy answered. He believed visibility invites enemies. The manager shifted uncomfortably. Then why, the director asked gently, did he never introduce you to the board? The boy's expression changed slightly, not weakness, but something deeper. He died before he could. The room went still. The director lowered her eyes for a moment. I'm sorry. The boy gave a small nod. So am I. A pause followed. Then the director returned to business. Regarding your request to liquidate your shares, you understand that selling 51% will destabilize the market. Investors will panic. The stock will plummet. I understand, the boy said. You could lose billions. He looked at her calmly. Money doesn't panic me. The manager swallowed. The boy leaned forward slightly, resting his hands on the table. What panics me, he continued, is seeing my mother come home exhausted every night. Watching her hands shake from scrubbing floors for people who never learned her name. No one spoke. She cleaned this building for 11 years, he said quietly. She knew every hallway, every office, every stain on the marble. The manager's throat tightened. Last month, the boy continued, she asked for 3 days off. She had a fever. She could barely stand. He paused. They told her she was replaceable. The word echoed painfully. The director's jaw stiffened. They terminated her contract, the boy said. No warning. No severance. The manager whispered, almost involuntarily, that decision came from middle administration. The boy's eyes snapped to him. And you laughed at me 5 minutes ago. Silence. The manager felt every pair of eyes shift toward him. I didn't know, he stammered. No, the boy replied evenly. You didn't. He leaned back again. That's the problem. The director stepped in carefully. We were unaware of her health situation. You were unaware of her existence, the boy corrected. The truth settled heavily over the table. One of the lawyers spoke gently. May we ask, why reveal yourself now? Why not contact us through legal channels? The boy looked down at his hands. Because I wanted to see it, he said. With my own eyes. See what? How you treat someone who looks powerless. The director inhaled slowly. And now that you've seen it? She asked. The boy reached into his backpack and placed a thin folder on the table. Inside were detailed proposals. Health coverage restructuring. Employee protection clauses. Mandatory minimum salary adjustments for maintenance and support staff. Anonymous grievance systems. Clear anti-discrimination policies. The legal advisors exchanged astonished looks. This is comprehensive, one murmured. I've been preparing it for 2 years, the boy said quietly. 2 years. The manager stared at him. You planned this? He asked. My father taught me something, the boy replied. He said wealth isn't control. It's responsibility. The director looked at him differently now. Your condition, she said carefully, is reinstatement of your mother with full medical coverage and implementation of these reforms. Yes, and if we refuse? The boy's gaze didn't waver. Then tomorrow morning I announce the liquidation publicly. The lawyer leaned toward the director and whispered urgently, calculating potential market damage. The director understood immediately. The bank could survive embarrassment. It could not survive collapse. She straightened. You have our agreement, she said firmly. The manager's eyes widened. Effective immediately, she continued. Your mother will be reinstated under executive contract status with medical benefits and back pay. The boy said nothing. And the reform proposals will be reviewed tonight. Implementation will begin within 30 days. The room felt like it had exhaled. But the boy wasn't finished. There's one more thing, he said quietly. Every muscle in the manager's body tensed. You, the boy said, looking directly at him, will apologize to her. Personally. The manager's pride flared for a brief, foolish second. But then he remembered the number on the screen. Yes, he said, voice low. I will. The director nodded respectfully. You have my word. The boy stood up slowly. For a moment, he looked small again, just a teenager in clothes that didn't fit quite right. But the air around him felt different now. Not heavy, commanding. I don't want revenge, he said softly. I want fairness. The director inclined her head. You'll attend the next board meeting? Yes. You understand it won't be simple. I don't need simple, the boy replied. I need honest. He walked toward the door. The manager hurried ahead to open it for him. Outside, word had already spread. Employees stood straighter. Whispers traveled like electricity through the lobby. When the conference room doors opened, conversations stopped instantly. The boy stepped out. The same marble floor. The same chandeliers. But everything felt altered. The receptionist who had smirked earlier now avoided eye contact entirely. The security guard gave him a subtle nod of respect. The boy paused briefly in the center of the lobby. He looked around slowly, at the polished counters, the towering ceilings, the employees in tailored suits. Then he walked toward the exit. The manager followed at a careful distance. Near the doors, he cleared his throat awkwardly. I truly apologize for earlier, he said. The boy studied him for a moment. Apologize to her, he said calmly. Not to me. The manager nodded. Yes, sir. The word came naturally this time. Outside, the afternoon sun had begun to fade into evening gold. An old yellow taxi waited by the curb. The driver leaned against the car, scrolling through his phone. The boy adjusted his backpack and stepped toward it. Behind him, through the glass walls, dozens of employees watched silently. The taxi door opened with a creak. Before getting in, the boy glanced once more at the towering building. Not with anger, not with triumph, but with resolve, he slid into the back seat. As the taxi pulled away, the regional director stepped beside the shaken manager near the entrance. Do you understand what happened today? She asked quietly. He shook his head faintly. She looked at the fading taxi. We were tested, the manager exhaled, slowly, and we failed. She didn't disagree. Inside the moving taxi, the boy stared out the window at the city lights beginning to glow. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. We would like to schedule your participation in the upcoming board meeting. He typed a short reply. I'll be there." A few streets away, in a small apartment, his mother sat at the kitchen table, coughing lightly into a handkerchief. Bills were spread before her. A letter of termination lay folded beside them. She had no idea what had happened. No idea that her son had just shifted the direction of a financial empire. No idea that tomorrow, someone from the bank would knock on her door. The taxi stopped at a red light. The boy looked down at his hands that still looked like a child's. But they no longer felt powerless. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "True wealth is not what you own. It's what you change." The light turned green, the city moved forward, and so did he.